Hello. Hello. Happy Father's Day. Yeah, and how about godfathers and people who've stood in the role of father? So many people to be grateful for in this world. Today is a happy day. It's Father's Day, and it's also a very sad day in the soul of our nation. You know, and that's the way of things in the world. You know, life doesn't honor our traditions and shows up when it wants to show up, and we get to cope with it as it appears. So I'd like to interrupt our regular schedule of programs to read to you the prayerful response to Charleston from our spiritual leader. You know, we don't have a head of church in our movement. We have a person whose job it is to articulate our message to the world. So he wrote this in response to Charleston. His name is Dr. Ken Gordon. The horrific shootings at the Emmanuel AME Church in Charleston, South Carolina on Wednesday is yet another example of the plague of violence and racism that seems to have no end in our society. We may never know what caused that young man to hate so virulently those whom he did not know personally and to take their lives in their house of worship, but we can know that he has been influenced by the culture of racism, hate, guns, and violence that surrounds all of us. It is in almost every movie and television show, on the lips of politicians, television, and internet pundits. We cannot heal what we refuse to acknowledge. Ours is a violent culture. In so many ways, we are becoming aware that a large portion of the targets of violence are people of color, our African American brothers and sisters. To turn away from the racism hidden in our collective psyche, in our social constructs and institutions, is to turn a blind eye on our fellow human beings. I am reminded, he writes, of Robert F. Kennedy's statement after the death of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and, ironically, not before his own death by violence. His speech became known as the mindless menace of violence, and it goes like this. Whenever any American's life is taken by another American unnecessarily, whether it is done in the name of the law or in defiance of law, by one person or a gang, or cold blood or in passion, in an attack of violence or in response to violence, whenever we tear at the fabric of life which another person has painfully and clumsily woven for themselves and their children, the whole nation is degraded. Yet, we seemingly tolerate a rising level of violence that ignores our common humanity and our claims to civilization alike. We calmly accept newspaper reports of civilian slaughter in far-off lands. We glorify killing on movie and television screens and call it entertainment. We make it easy for people of all shades of sanity to acquire weapons and ammunition they desire. Too often, we honor swagger and bluster and the wielders of force. Too often, we excuse those who are willing to build their own lives on the shattered dreams of others. Some Americans who preach nonviolence abroad fail to practice it here at home. Some who accuse others of inciting riots have, by their own conduct, invited them. Some look for scapegoats, others look for conspiracies. But this much is clear. Violence breeds violence. Repression brings retaliation. And only a cleaning of our whole society can remove the sickness from our soul. And then Dr. Ken goes on to write, it is my opinion that we can no longer continue to pretend that the travesties we have witnessed are isolated incidents. They are acts of racism, intolerance, and injustice, and they are bringing to light a long-standing systemic problem that originates in a consciousness of fear and domination. The prevalence of this inhumanity towards the black community and the reaction it is receiving from thinking people demonstrates to me that something new wants to be born, and that means something old has to be released. So, Let us, in the Centers for Spiritual Living, do our spiritual duty to take spiritual action, and let us pray for all involved in this tragedy. Let us pray for our society and its leaders, and let us also speak out on behalf of common sense and justice and equality and peace. Let us see and trust that something powerful and necessary is working its way into expression, that spirit is in the mix, and that there will come a time when acts like this will no longer take place. Let us cease the celebration of killing anytime, any place. Let us turn away from violence wherever it shows up in so-called entertainment. Let us take the lead in bringing about a society that fully embraces diversity and connection so that the manifestation of love and peace can be guaranteed. Let us step forward into the vanguard of truly creating a world that works for everyone, a world where peace prevails. So today, call an AME church, offer your condolences, ask when they are praying, and ask what they need. I send you this with all my blessings, Dr. Ken Gordon, and I read it and I took it to heart, this charge he gave us to reach out, which is why we made these cards pre-addressed to the church in Charleston so that we could write our notes of love and support, and so that they could receive, staggered over the weeks, many cards of flowers to communicate to them our love and support. You can drop it off in the social hall. There's tables there with pens in case you didn't bring them. And as I looked at the card, I thought, well, this is small. Wonder what I would say in such a small space, but it occurred to me I don't need a lot of space, because words, I have just enough room here to write what is in my heart, and sometimes, and at times like this, what in my heart is just, I'm sorry. In fact, our founder has some advice for times like this. He wrote, sometimes the most compassionate thing we can do for another is to sit in holy silence. Wisdom knows that there is nothing to say. When we are fully present to love in the midst of pain, we act as a bridge in consciousness for love to cross over. This gift transforms life. Last week's speaker, Dr. Petra Welder, she found something to say. And I'm so glad she did, because I've been struggling with words for myself. And she posted it on her website. It's a pledge that she wrote. And it goes like this. To my African American brothers and sisters, I apologize. I am so sorry. This is my heartfelt apology, profound sorrow and deep outrage at the crimes being committed and that have been perpetrated in our past against you because of the color of your skin. I am ashamed of and apologize for this unacceptable and unjust behavior by anyone who looks like me or has the same color skin I do. My heart bleeds, my mind does not comprehend, and my soul is outraged that as human beings we treat each other and other human beings so grossly and inhumanely. So I stand with you for a just and fair, safe and celebrated life. I affirm that as the insidious racial biases in our cultural structures and institutions are finally caught on camera, that we are no longer able to pretend that they don't exist. I affirm that true healing is the result. I demand that the violence and hate that are perpetrated on you, solely due to the fact that you are black, is now so intolerable to us as white people, as a culture, and a nation that we rise up together for justice and sane human relations. I demand equal treatment for all in the eyes of the law, our justice system, our courts, and on our streets, and in our churches, in our businesses, and in our homes. My pledge is this to you. I will not turn away. I will not be silent. I will act and speak for justice and fairness. I will always be a safe place for you. I will stand as witness to the deep and abiding love and truth that connects our hearts and souls. I will joyously celebrate the unique and precious being of each person and the contribution of every life. I will pray, knowing all of our spiritual mind treatments do make a difference in the raising of the collective consciousness, even through our grieving hearts. I say yes to a life and love of connection. And I declare the universal no to the false beliefs that are still hiding in our collective subjective mind. I root them out. I release them back into the void, knowing that there is no spiritual truth or validity to anything other than the perfect reality of love. I declare that love wraps around everyone affected these days and in this situation. I affirm, no, I demand the demonstration of the safe universe that I know we live in to now manifest in the lives of all of our African Americans. I stand for a miracle of consciousness, an outpouring of love, and the light of truth to make itself manifest now. From my heart, she writes, and from my actions, may you see and feel the truth of my intention. With my love and prayers, I join in the remembering of our oneness and the resurrection of the truth of our connection in every city, in every church, and in every person. With profound respect, Dr. Petra Welders. And I read that and I thought, how am I going to get all of that onto the card? You know, because that's what my heart is. But you know what? I might not be able to put all of that on the card, but I can put my love, even if it's one word. I can write down my respect for the relatives of those people who were slain in the church, who, when they had an opportunity to address the accused man, one by one spoke and offered him forgiveness, even while they described the pain of their losses. You know, our movement is activated by a vision. We call it the global vision, and it says this: we envision a worldwide culture in which forgiveness, whether for errors or injustices or debts, is the norm. Well, this is what it looks like. It's not just a happy affirmative idea born out of the New Age. It's a heartbreakingly difficult to put down tragedies practice of love. And I'm humbled by the forgiveness of the family. And you know, it reminds me of the Amish families not too long ago who expressed the same forgiveness for the man who murdered their children in school, in the schoolhouse. You know, I was talking with a colleague at that time, and she said to me, I believe that we do the terrible things that we do to each other because we do not yet understand the unity of all life. And she said, and this is why I'm committed to our teaching, because I want to bring that awareness of our connectedness into every conversation and into every encounter that I can. I've never forgotten that. The global vision, it continues to say, we envision humanity awaking to its spiritual magnificence and discovering the creative power of thought. A world where every person discovers his or her own personal power and ability to create an individual life that works within a world that works for everyone. It's beautiful, and we still have to cope with this world. I don't know about you, but I've been noticing some symptoms of grieving. It's different for different people. You know, maybe it shows up as unusual sensitivity, or the slightest thing can set you off, or being quickly angered even with people you typically love very much, or very low tolerance for errors, or strong desire to correct people. You know, who knows how it shows up. At times like this, many of us find ourselves asking, wondering, questioning, where does this all fit in? What is the role of oneness and allness and the power of mind? How am I supposed to think? What am I supposed to do? I was remembering a trip I took back to South Africa where I had the opportunity to visit our Center for Spiritual Living in Johannesburg there. At the time, I'd already been the minister here for many, many years, and I had the opportunity to practice what we learn here, working my way through many difficulties, through organizational changes, through difficult relationships. So I felt like I really had a handle on this idea of our allness and oneness. I felt all faith-filled. except that when I got to South Africa and saw our metaphysicians, our cousins in the Center for Spiritual Living in Johannesburg, who were living in a world of relative danger in comparison, where there's a prevailing feeling of threat, where outside the church during the service, armed guards were standing watching the cars, where billboards on the streets from newspaper report the most recent murder and rape tolls regularly. And I watched the members of the Center for Spiritual Living say and sing the same things that we say and sing here. We are one. There is only one life. It's all good. In God I live and breathe and move and have my being. And I wondered if I would be able to do the same thing with so much unsettling danger around me on an ongoing basis. The truth is, sometimes I get shaken up when I misplace my keys. You know? Sometimes if I perceive some slight mistreatment in somebody's face or words, I get bothered. Small things unhinge me. I can't imagine what it must be like to come home to the news that someone I love, something so epically large as the news that someone I love was shot in a race-based hate crime. And I don't know if I could stand secure in my faith at such a time. In the South African community, in the Amish community, and in Charleston, I can see now how profound their connection is to their faith tradition. And perhaps it's because they have been tested in an environment that is much more taxing than anything I have ever had to face in my life. And it causes me to ask the question, well, what is mine to do to change that? From this position of privilege, what is mine to do? The global vision says we envision a world where personal, that's me, where personal responsibility joins with social conscience. That's me. In every area of the political, corporate, academic, and social sectors, providing sustainable structures to further the emerging global consciousness. You know, during the weekend I've been reading on Facebook, and one of the members of one of our centers in another state, she created a group asking people, what is mine to do? And she says the main reason for creating this group and the hashtag and the meme that goes with it, hashtag mine to do, was to respond to the many people posting on social media that they felt frustrated with the continued demonstration of race-based hatred and they didn't know what to do about it. What could they do? So she created the group and she invites us to complete the following sentence. In response to race-based hatred and violence, I will ... And what I love about this project is that it appeals to that part of our teaching and faith tradition that calls us to use our infinitely creative minds to look not only at what we are dealing with, but also beyond to the greater yet to be, to remember that what we imagine and what we dwell upon and what we embrace is as important as our compassion. And here's what some people are writing on this page. In response to race-based hatred and violence, I will love. I will love the haters. I will love the people grieving. I will love the hated. I will love. Another said, in response to race-based hatred and violence, I will continue to look deep into my own heart for ways that I act, think, feel from a space of division and separateness, and then consciously shift my energy towards holding a vision for oneness, respect, and justice, and dignity for all. Another, in response to race-based hatred and violence, I will consciously look for places within me where I am not at peace and stay willing to learn what I don't yet know. Another, in response to race-based hatred and violence, I will have empathy for a plight I have never endured. and I will live with an open mind, knowing God is in all and that we are one. In response to race-based hatred and violence, I will allow space to fully acknowledge the grief of these events. In response to race-based hatred and violence, I will work with friends and allies to build a world that works for everyone. I will call out racism and injustice where I see it, and I will work to build bridges. In response to race-based hatred and violence, I will speak unfiltered truth to institutional powers in the world and also to the power in me. This week, the topic in the book we're reading together, The Kybalion, is the mental universe, chapter 5, appropriately so. It's one of the most loveliest descriptions of the way mind works I've ever read, and it makes an amazing case for the oneness of being, the metaphysical explanation for why it is appropriate for us to love each other, and why it is appropriate for us to pay attention to the way we are using our mind. It is a call for us to use our unlimited imaginations, to undo the knots of us-them thinking, and to rest our vision resolutely on religious, spiritual, and every other kind of freedom and equality. Now, I hope you will read it, if just chapter 5, if you read nothing else, because I haven't had an opportunity to look into it deeply today. But we will pick it up on Wednesday, and we will be talking about it on Wednesday. Right after the tragedy in Newtown, a member of our center wrote to me and said, I don't consider myself to be a Christian, but I do believe that the unconditional love that Jesus taught lives within us all. It is our essential nature, the Christ consciousness. It's that ability to love as Jesus loved, or as Mother Teresa loved, or as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. loved, or as Gandhi loved, and it is needed now more than ever. I was convinced that this year that peace and love and hope had vanished from the planet, stolen by the violence and tragedy in the world, and rightfully so. But I realized that while, yes, my heart is aching, my soul remains open. That place where we are one. So please, don't be afraid to love. It's sometimes messy and risky and vulnerable, but it is the only thing that can bring us back from this place we now find ourselves and return us to where we belong. And I've always kept that. I've always kept it to read it. Oh, and our president, President Barack Obama, he said, the good news is that I am confident that the outpouring of unity and strength and fellowship and love across Charleston today from all races, from all faiths, from all places of worship indicates the degree to which those old vestiges of hatred can be overcome. That certainly, he said, was Dr. King's hope just over 50 years ago after 4 little girls were killed in a bombing in a black church in Birmingham, Alabama. You see, he's calling us to a vision, to be part of the outpouring of unity and strength and fellowship and love, and to not be overwhelmed and confused by the appearance of what is truly happening, but to still have the courage to believe again in goodness. So I invite you today, in your own heart, in your own words, silently in your mind, to take a moment with me to acknowledge those people who were slain and to say your own prayers. Will you take a breath in with me? And as we exhale, I invite you to join me in a prayer of respect and healing. And in this consciousness of shared prayer, as we each one of us in our own way acknowledge that one reality, the divine, by its most ancient name today, love, we take a moment to drink in our shared reality in this love. We are acknowledging its everywhere presentness so that we may be reminded that it is here also in us, so that we can look to that place within us where we are unchanged, where the eternal love of God is present, to draw from it the courage and the wherewithal to be an ambassador for love and inclusion and peace in this world. We let it stir in us deeply so that it carries us through the appearances of differences and the confusion of this world, never forgetting that the foundation of our being and the truth of our lives is oneness in God. It is so good to be able to pray this prayer together. And we acknowledge the spiritual law that governs the universe, or the Holy Spirit, if you like, to carry this all into being. And which is why we say, and so it is. I invite you to breathe in with me and to exhale. And I ask the ushers to stand, because now it is our time to share together. I invite you to take your gift in your hand and say after me, I bless this gift. I send it forth to heal and prosper. It does amazing work in the world. And so it is. Ushers, please receive the gift.
Let there be peace in my mind. Let there be peace.